So the topic is development and morphological characteristics of dentin. Introduction. Dentin, it provides the bulk and general form of the tooth. So throughout the thickness of the dentin, dentinal tubules are present. So these are the odontoblast cells. So from the odontoblast cells, odontoblast processes are emerging. So these odontoblast processes are residing within the specialized structures called as dentinal tubules. So the blue color region here is the dentinal tubule. So within this dentinal tubule, the odontoblast process is residing. Now, the dentin, it is formed slightly before the enamel formation. So, that is the reason why dentin is determining the shape of the cusps and ridges, size and the number of the roots. So, physical and chemical properties of the dentin. So, dentin, it is slightly yellowish in color and it is becoming darker with the age. So, it is having viscoelastic property and it is harder than bone and it is softer than enamel. So, the reason why it is harder than bone is the bone is having inorganic portion of 50% and dentin is having 65% of inorganic portion. So, that is the reason why dentin is harder than bone. Whereas dentin is softer than enamel because enamel is having 95% of inorganic portion and dentin is having only 65% of inorganic portion. So it is softer than enamel. So dentin, it is harder in its central portion than near the pulp or its periphery. Suppose this is a tooth and this is the pulp. This is the dentin. So in the center portion, it is harder. So dentin in its central portion, it is harder than near the pulp, not the periphery. So this is the dentin that is present near the pulp and this is the dentin that is present away from the pulp, that is towards the periphery. So the dentin that is present in the central portion is hard when compared to those portions. Now the dentin, it is radiolucent than enamel. Next is composition of dentin. So out of 100%, 35% is occupied by organic matrix and water and remaining 65% is occupied by inorganic matrix. So out of this 35%, 90% is occupied by type 1 collagen and only small amounts of type 3 and type 5 collagen is present. And very fractional inclusions of non-collagenous matrix proteins and lipids are present. So apart from this, non-collagenous matrix proteins are also present and they are packing the space that is present between the collagen fibers and they are accumulating along the periphery of the dentinal tubules. So suppose this is a dentinal tubule and this is a collagen fiber. So non-collagenous proteins are packing the space. So this is the space that is present between the dentinal tubule and collagen fiber. So this is a non-collagenous matrix protein. So this non-collagenous matrix protein is occupying the space that is present between the dentinal tubule and the collagen fiber. And this non-collagenous matrix proteins are accumulating along the periphery of the dentinal tubule. So this is the periphery of the dentinal tubule. So along the periphery of the dentinal tubule, the non-collagenous matrix proteins are getting accumulated. So most abundant non-collagenous proteins are dentin phosphoproteins, sialoproteins, and glycoproteins. So initially, these three proteins are occurring as a single molecule known as dentin sialophosphoprotein. So this is an odontoblast cell, and this is the odontoblast process. So this is an extracellular matrix. So odontoblast, it is releasing, odontoblast is releasing dentin sialophosphoprotein. So this dentin sialophosphoprotein, it is occurring as a single molecule with three structural domains. So it is having phosphoprotein on one end, sialoprotein on other end, and glycoprotein is present in the middle portion. Now this dentin sialophosphoprotein is now present in the extracellular matrix. Now this molecule is occurring as a single molecule. Now this should be cleaved because the single molecule is unable to exhibit its function. So for this reason, this molecule is cleaved into three proteins. So first BMP2 is coming and processing the molecule, and it is causing the release of the phosphoproteins into the extracellular matrix. Now phosphoproteins got separated from the structure, and the glycoproteins and sialoproteins, they are still attached. So these are separated by MMP2 and MMP20. So now MMP2 and MMP20 will come and act on this molecule and will process the molecule and will cause the separation of the glycoprotein and the sialoprotein. So the glycoprotein and sialoprotein are now released as separate molecules, and they are present in the extracellular matrix. Now these three proteins which got released, they are having negative charge and they are acidic in nature, and they are strong calcium attractants. Apart from these proteins, the dentin matrix protein, osteonectin, osteocalcin, bone sialoprotein, osteopontin, matrix extracellular phosphoglycoprotein, proteoglycans, and some serum proteins are also present within the matrix. So apart from this, transforming growth factors, fibroblast growth factor, insulin growth factor, platelet-derived growth factor, placenta growth factor, vascular endothelial growth factor, angiogenic growth factors are also present. So as already mentioned, 65% is occupied by inorganic matrix, especially hydroxyapatite crystals. So these crystals are plate shaped and they are smaller than hydroxyapatite crystals which are present in the enamel. And apart from the hydroxyapatite crystals, small amounts of phosphates, carbonates, and sulfates are also present within the dentin matrix. So the crystals which are present within the dentin, they are poor in calcium, but they are rich in carbon when compared to that of the enamel. So next is formation of dentin. The process of formation of dentin is called as dentinogenesis. So dentin is deposited by specialized cells called as odontoblasts. So these odontoblasts are not readily present. They should also be differentiated from undifferentiated cells. So this is an undifferentiated ectomesenchymal cell that is present within the dental papilla. So this is the dental papilla. Within dental papilla, undifferentiated ectomesenchymal cells are present. So these are the inner enamel epithelial cells. And this is the basal lamina of inner enamel epithelium. And this is an acellular zone that is present between the basal lamina of inner enamel epithelial cells and the undifferentiated ectomesenchymal cells. So this acellular zone, it is occupied by collagen fibers. The blue dots over here are the collagen fibers. So in the next diagram, we can see the mitosis process is happening within the undifferentiated ectomesenchymal cell. So here, if we observe, the inner enamel epithelial cells are polarized. So that means the nucleus, which was previously present in the center of the cell, is now moved away from the basal lamina and it has become polarized. So once the inner enamel epithelial cells become polarized, the undifferentiated ectomesenchymal cell will undergo the mitosis, and it is causing the release of two daughter cells. Now the daughter cell, which is present close to the basal lamina of inner enamel epithelial cell, will be under the influence of the growth factors and signaling molecules of the inner enamel epithelium. Now this undifferentiated ectomesenchymal cell, from the undifferentiated ectomesenchymal cell, the daughter cell which is formed will be under the influence of these factors released by inner enamel epithelium. Now the daughter cell is getting differentiated into the odontoblast. Now this odontoblast is a highly polarized cell and it is slowly increasing in its size and it is forming the odontoblast processes. These odontoblast process will always try to establish its connection with the basal lamina of the inner enamel epithelium and the cells which are away from the inner enamel epithelium. So this is the daughter cell. But this daughter cell is away from the inner enamel epithelium. So it cannot be under the influence of the growth factors and signaling molecules released by the inner enamel epithelium. So this cell is remaining undifferentiated as subodontoblast cell. So this is the histological view of odontoblast. This star mark over here is representing the acellular zone, and these are the inner enamel epithelial cells. And this is a pre-odontoblast, and these are the odontoblast cells. So as we can see this odontoblast cells over here, we can see the highly polarized nucleus, and this is the predentin region. The blue color area here is the predentin, which is always adjacent to the odontoblasts, and the cells over here are the ameloblasts or the inner enamel epithelial cells, and we can see a very well highly differentiated or highly polarized nucleus is present. Next is the life cycle of odontoblast. So morphology of odontoblast is completely dependent on the functional activity of the odontoblast. So there are 4 stages of odontoblast. One is the pre-odontoblast, secretory or active odontoblast, transitional odontoblast, or aged odontoblast. So first is the pre-odontoblast. This cell, it is small and it is ovoid in shape. And if we see the nucleolus, it is very small here. And these are the odontoblast processes which are emerging from this cell. And these odontoblast processes are trying to establish its connection with the basal lamina. So this is the basal lamina of inner enamel epithelium. So this basal lamina, this odontoblast processes are trying to establish a connection with the basal lamina of inner enamel epithelial cells. So if we observe the cell organelles in this pre-odontoblast are very less. So next stage is the secretory odontoblast or active odontoblast. So this cell, the morphology of this cell, see, the cell, it is tall, columnar, and if we see the nucleus, it has come to the basal extremity and the cell got polarized here. And if we observe the nucleus, chromatin condensation is present within the nucleus and nucleolus got increased in its size. And apart from this, there are abundant cell organelles present within this secretory odontoblast, and the cell organelles, there are many mitochondria, rough endoplasmic reticulum, and Golgi apparatus. So the green region here is the Golgi apparatus. From the Golgi apparatus, secretory granules are budding off. So these are the secretory granules. This sea green portions or these granules are the secretory granules which are packing both the collagenous and non-collagenous proteins within it. So these secretory granules, they are budding off from the Golgi apparatus and moving towards the odontoblast processes. So the secretory odontoblast is also depositing the predentin. Next is the transitional stage. If we observe the transitional stage, the cell has become narrower and the nucleus, it has moved away from the basal extremity. So in the secretory stage, the nucleus is present at the base of the cell, whereas in the transitional stage, the nucleus, it has moved away from the basal extremity. And if we observe the nucleus, the condensation of the chromatin, it got increased, and the nucleolus size, it got reduced than that of the pre-odontoblast stage. And the cell organelles are less here. Cell organelles are less here, and appearance of the autophagic vacuoles. And the secretory granules number also got reduced. The only difference is the transitional stage, it can be appreciated only under the electron microscope, whereas the remaining 3 stages, the pre-odontoblast, secretory odontoblast, and aged odontoblast, they can be appreciated under the light microscope. So last stage is the aged odontoblast. So if we observe the cell, so the cell has become very stubby and it has become very small. The nucleus, condensation of the chromatin, it got increased, and the nucleolus size, it got reduced, and the nucleus has moved away from the basal extremity, and supranuclear portion is having lipid-filled vacuoles, whereas infranuclear portion is having few cell organelles in it. Now, secretory granules are not present here. So only few, if present, only few secretory granules are present. So this is a Golgi saccule. This is a transmission electron micrograph of a Golgi stack. So this is a Golgi saccule. So we can see the budding of secretory granule from the Golgi saccule. This SG is the secretory granule here. So next is the primary cilium. So this primary cilium is present on the odontoblast. So this is the primary cilium. The presence of primary cilium is indicating that odontoblast is in the post-mitotic stage. And apart from this, the primary cilium is also allowing the odontoblast to respond to the stimulus. And the size of the odontoblast is, the length of the odontoblast is 50 micrometers, whereas the diameter of the odontoblast is 4 to 7 micrometers. So next is about odontoblast processes. So from the apical portion of the cell, the odontoblast processes are emerging. So this is the odontoblast process, which is emerging from the odontoblast cell. So this odontoblast process cytoplasm is different from that of the odontoblast cytoplasm. So the cytoplasm of this odontoblast process is devoid of, the cytoplasm of odontoblast process has only the microtubules and secretory granules and microfilaments. And this cytoplasm, it is devoid of major cell organelles. So these are the secretory granules. This is the electron micrograph image. So the SG here are the secretory granules, and MF here are the microfilaments, and these are the microtubules. The lines which we can appreciate in the process are the microtubules. And the green regions over here are the secretory vesicles. The region here adjacent to the odontoblast, immediately adjacent to the odontoblast, is the predentin region. So next is the formation of organic matrix. So first is the appearance of the Van Gogh fibers. So these Van Gogh fibers, they are appearing deep in between the odontoblasts. So here these are the odontoblasts. The red line which I'm drawing here are the odontoblasts. So deep in between the odontoblasts, these fibers which are emerging are called as Van Gogh fibers. So this Van Gogh fibers, they are emerging deep in between the odontoblasts, and they are moving away from the odontoblast, and they are running towards the basal lamina of inner enamel epithelium. So this is the basal lamina of inner enamel epithelium. So these Van Gogh fibers, they are running towards this basal lamina of inner enamel epithelium, where they are fanning out in the structureless ground substance. And this Van Gogh fiber is having a diameter of 0.1 to 0.2 micrometers, and it is having type 3 collagen. And odontoblast is also secreting type 1 collagen and matrix vesicles. So the type 1 collagen which got released, it is moving towards the basal lamina of inner enamel epithelial cells. So that means it comes and it lies in this portion. So type 1 collagen protein, so type 1 collagen and matrix vesicles, they come and they lie superficially near the basal lamina of inner enamel epithelium. So this becomes the basal lamina of inner enamel epithelium. These are the amyloblasts. So this is the matrix vesicle. So superficially near the basal lamina of inner enamel epithelial cells, type 1 collagen and matrix vesicles are present. So together, type 3 collagen, type 1 collagen and matrix vesicle, it forms the mantle dentin. It forms the mantle dentin, which is of 15 to 20 micrometers thickness. So the matrix vesicle, which is present near the basal lamina, it is responsible for the mineralization of the dentin. So the formed organic matrix now, it has to be mineralized. So this is happening with the help of the matrix vesicle. So this is the structure of the matrix vesicle. This matrix vesicle, it is a membrane bound structure. So it is having phospholipid bilayer. So this is a phospholipid bilayer, and uh, there are some channels, calcium channels, annexin 5, annexin 2 and annexin 6 are the calcium channels. So apart from this, the phospholipid bilayer. So this is the inner membrane leaflet and this is the outer membrane leaflet. So within the inner membrane leaflet, phosphatidylserine is present. This phosphatidylserine is a calcium attractant. It is attracting the calcium into the matrix vesicle. Apart from that, annexin 5, annexin 2 and annexin 6, which are present or which are spanning this phospholipid membrane, are acting like calcium binding proteins or the transmembrane channels. So through this, the calcium is gaining its entry into the matrix vesicle. Now the calcium, it got accumulated within the matrix vesicle. Now for the formation of hydroxyapatite crystal formation, it happens within the matrix vesicle. Now this hydroxyapatite crystal formation, for the formation of hydroxyapatite crystal, calcium and phosphate are required. Now the phosphate is gaining its entry through the sodium dependent phosphate channel into the matrix vesicle. Now the calcium and phosphate, they got accumulated within the matrix vesicle. So calcium and phosphate, they got accumulated within the matrix vesicle. Now they readily do not form the hydroxyapatite crystal. Now individually the calcium and phosphate should cross or so they should exceed the solubility. So the amount of the calcium and amount of the phosphate that is present within the matrix vesicle, they should exceed the solubility of the calcium and phosphate within the matrix vesicle. Then only the formation of apatite crystals happen. So once it exceeds the solubility, apatite crystals will form. The formed apatite crystals will be so see, this is a mineral which is formed. So it gets deposited on the inner membrane leaflet. Like this, apatite crystals are formed. Now these apatite crystals will fuse to form the hydroxyapatite crystal within the matrix vesicle. So this hydroxyapatite crystal which is formed, it should not be dissoluted again. So this hydroxyapatite crystal, it should move out of the matrix vesicle. So for this, type 10 collagen and type 2 collagen will come and attach to the matrix vesicle. So this type 2 collagen and type 10 collagen, once it comes and attaches to the matrix vesicle, now the hydroxyapatite crystal is utilizing these two collagens as a bridge and it is moving out of the matrix vesicle into the extracellular matrix. So this is how the hydroxyapatite crystals which are formed within the matrix vesicles, they are moving out into the extracellular matrix. Like this, many matrix vesicles are present and many hydroxyapatite crystals are released into the extracellular matrix. Apart from this, non-collagenous proteins are also regulating the mineralization. So dentin phosphoprotein, it is controlling the growth of the apatite crystal. Osteonectin is inhibiting the growth of the apatite crystal, but it is promoting its binding to the collagen. And osteopontin is promoting the mineralization, whereas chondroitin sulfate is opposing the actions of mineralization. Next is calcifying of the matrix. So that is, it happens by two mechanisms. One is the globular calcification or chalcospheric calcification. So this globular calcification, so here we can see the globules. That means the hydroxyapatite crystals which got released. So many matrix vesicles will be present. Suppose, so this is a matrix vesicle. So there are 4 matrix vesicles here. All these are releasing hydroxyapatite crystals. Now, hydroxyapatite crystals are formed like a globular masses. Now, these globular masses will fuse to calcify the matrix. So here we can see this is the histological section. So here we can see the globular masses. So these globular masses are fusing and forming the mineralization, calcification. So here the dentin is getting calcified. So this kind of calcification is called as globular calcification, which is also called as chalcospheric calcification. So this kind of calcification is most commonly seen in the mantle dentin. So this is the mantle dentin. So here this kind of calcification is seen. So this globular calcification, it happens. So this kind of calcification is happening if the dentin deposition is faster. Whereas if dentin deposition is uniform, then this linear calcification happens. So here we can see the uniform calcification or uniform mineralization of the dentin. So this kind of calcification is called as linear calcification. So this linear calcification is happening within the circumpulpal dentin. So this becomes the circumpulpal dentin. Within the circumpulpal dentin, linear calcification happens. Next is the formation of root dentin. So the epithelial cells of the Hertwig's root sheath are responsible for the formation or for the differentiation of odontoblasts, and these odontoblasts which got differentiated are now laying the root dentin. So outermost layer of the root dentin is very similar to the mantle dentin which is present in the crown. So this is the outermost. So this is the root and this is the root. So the outermost layer of the root dentin is very similar to the mantle dentin that is present in the crown. But the only difference is the phosphoprotein content. So it is formed at a very slow speed, and degree of mineralization is also different from that of the coronal dentin. Next is secondary dentinogenesis. Secondary dentin is deposited after the root formation is completed. So once the root is completely formed, then only the secondary dentin deposition happens. So secondary dentin deposition is also happening by the odontoblast only, but the only thing is this dentin is forming at very slow pace. And mineral content is similar to that of the primary dentin. So this is the secondary dentin which is formed, and this secondary dentin is always bordering the pulp. So this is the secondary dentin which is bordering the pulp, and it is very similar to the primary dentin, but the only difference is it is formed at a very slow pace, but mineral content is similar to that of the primary dentin. It is also formed by the same odontoblasts. So next is the tertiary dentinogenesis. Tertiary dentinogenesis is happening only at specific sites. That means if there is any injury to any particular portion of the teeth, at that portion only tertiary dentinogenesis happens. So rate of deposition, it depends upon the degree of the injury. So there are three different types of dentin as already mentioned. One is the mantle dentin and circumpulpal dentin. So this mantle dentin and circumpulpal dentin together, they are called as primary dentin. And second type of dentin is the secondary dentin. This is formed around the pulp, or this is bordering the pulp. And next is tertiary dentin. So this tertiary dentin is formed only if there is any stimulus. See, there is a stimulus here. The black region here is the tertiary dentin, which is formed in response to this stimulus. So this is the stimulus. The black region over here is the tertiary dentin. So this is the stimulus. The black region over here is the tertiary dentin. Next is secondary and tertiary dentin. So here, this is the histological picture, which is showing the tertiary dentin. So here we can see this is the primary dentin and this is the secondary dentin. We can clearly demarcate the difference between the primary and secondary dentin because the dentinal tubules which are present in the primary dentin are freely present, and in the secondary dentin the dentinal tubules are constricted. So we can clearly appreciate the interface between the primary and secondary dentin. So next is the tertiary dentin. So tertiary dentin is again of two types. One is the reactionary dentin, second is the reparative dentin. So this is reactionary dentin. So this reactionary dentin is formed because of the milder injury. So this is an odontoblast layer. So if there is any milder injury, now this odontoblast layer is not getting destroyed here. The odontoblasts itself, they are depositing the dentin. So the deposited dentin is now called as a reactionary dentin. But what happens in severe injury is, that means in more intense injury or severe injury, what happens here is because of a very strong stimulus, there is a local death of the odontoblast. So here this gray region here is representing the death of the odontoblastic layer. So this odontoblast, they got destroyed. Now the dentin should be deposited. Now this dentin here is deposited by odontoblast-like cells. So these odontoblast-like cells are depositing the dentin, and this kind of dentin is known as reparative dentin. Next is structure of the dentinal tubules. So these dentinal tubules are S or sigmoid folds. So these are the dentinal tubules which are following S-shaped. So these are the S-shaped structures. So and they are having a so the dentin here is having a thickness of 3 to 10 mm, and see, this is a primary curvature here. So this is the primary curvature and secondary curvature. So this is the dentinal tubule which is having S-shaped, and this is the primary curvature. So the first curvature, the convexity. So this is the dentinal tubule. This is S-shaped dentinal tubule. So the convexity, it is present towards the apex of the tooth. And throughout the dentinal tubule, the secondary curvatures are present. So something like this. So this becomes the dentinal tubule. So something like this. So this secondary curvatures are sinusoidal in shape. So the thickness of the dentin on outer and inner surfaces is 5:1. So near the pulpal cavity, the thickness of the dentin, it is 3 to 4 mm, whereas near the outer end, it is having 1 mm. So in this diagram, we can see this arrows or this red line is representing the dentinal tubule. Within the dentinal tubule, ODP portion, here is the odontoblast portion. Next is the peritubular dentin. So this peritubular dentin is twice as thick in the outer dentin than in the inner dentin. So why is this happening here? So if peritubular dentin is growing, it is constricting the dentinal tubules to a diameter of 1 mm near the dentino-enamel junction. So first, this is the dentinal tubule. The process within it is the odontoblast process. So surrounding the dentinal tubule, peritubular dentin is present. So now this is the dentino-enamel junction. So what he is telling is this like this. The diameter of the dentinal tubule will be like this. So that means the diameter will be some 3 to 4 mm near the pulp. When it comes to the dentino-enamel junction, the diameter it got reduced to 1 mm. So why is this happening? Why the diameter of the dentinal tubule is getting reduced? Because so why the dentinal tubule diameter is reduced is what is happening here is peritubular dentin is getting deposited. The thickness of the peritubular dentin is high in the outer dentin. So here the thickness of the peritubular dentin is very high, because of which the dentinal tubule diameter is getting constricted near the dentino-enamel junction to 1 mm. So the diameter here is only 1 mm. And next is periodontoblast space. So this periodontoblast space is present between the peritubular dentin and odontoblast process, and within this space, dentinal fluid is present. Next is intertubular dentin. So here in this diagram, we can clearly appreciate the intertubular dentin. So this is the dentinal tubule and this is the dentinal tubule. In between this dentinal tubule is the intertubular dentin. So the name itself is indicating that it is present between the tubules, in between, tubular, in between the dentinal tubules. So the dentin that is present between the tubules, dentinal tubules, is known as intertubular dentin. So to be more specific, it is present between the zones of the peritubular dentin. So this is a highly mineralized one, and this is retained after the decalcification. And this is having interwoven, or it is having a network of type 1 collagen fibers. So this is having a diameter of, the collagen fibers here are having a diameter of 50 to 200 nanometers. And this is an intertubular dentin. So this portion. So this portion is the intertubular dentin, and this lines over here are the dentinal tubules. Next is the sclerotic dentin. It is one of the 8 changes of the dentin. So this dentinal tubules, they have become occluded with the calcified tubules. So if this is the dentinal tubule, if it is getting occluded with the calcified material, then that kind of dentin is known as sclerotic dentin. So apical third of the root and in the crown midway between the dentino-enamel junction and the surface of the pulp, the sclerotic dentin is present. And deposition, so it can happen with any of these three mechanisms. So deposition of the mineral within the tubule without any dentin formation. So within the tubule, deposition of the mineral can happen, or a diffuse mineralization that occurs with viable odontoblast processes still present. So within the dentinal tubule, still viable odontoblast processes can be present. And other thing is mineralization of the process itself. So this is a dentinal tubule, and within the dentinal tubule, odontoblast processes will be present. So this odontoblast process itself is getting mineralized, and the tubular contents, other tubular contents are also getting mineralized, including the intratubular collagen fibers. So the collagen fibers which are present within the tubule are also getting mineralized. So this is the other way of mineralization. Next is the interglobular dentin. So this is the unmineralized portion or hypomineralized portion of the dentin. So this is most commonly seen in the circumpulpal dentin. So this is the circumpulpal dentin. So this here we can see the interglobular dentin. So this can happen because of the deficiency in vitamin D or because of high levels of the fluoride. So these are the interglobular dentin. So these are interglobular dentin. So next is dentinal sensitivity. Dentinal sensitivity can happen in any of the three ways. One is dentin directly innervated. So because of the direct innervation of the dentin, dentinal sensitivity can occur, or because of the uh, odontoblasts. So the second one is the transduction theory, where the odontoblast processes, they are acting like receptors. So because of which dentinal sensitivity can happen. And the third is hydrodynamic theory. So here, because of the movement of the fluid within the dentinal tubules, they are causing the stimulation of the nerve endings. So because of which dentinal sensitivity can happen. So dentinal sensitivity is the most commonly encountered problem. So why the dentinal sensitivity is caused? It can happen because of the improper toothbrushing. It can happen because of the premature contacts. If there is any gingival recession, then sensitivity can occur. If there are any large amounts of exogenous or endogenous acids in the diet, then sensitivity can happen. Congenital abnormalities of dentin. Dentinogenesis imperfecta. So according to the Shields classification, it is of three types: type 1, type 2, and type 3. Type 1 is associated with osteogenesis imperfecta. And so this dentinogenesis type 2 and type 3, they are having uh, autosomal dominant inheritance, and this dentinogenesis imperfecta is mainly caused because of the mutation in dentin silophosphoprotein gene. So this dentin silophosphoprotein gene is getting mutated, because of which we can see the dentinogenesis imperfecta. And dentin dysplasia is of two types, and this is having an autosomal dominant inheritance, and it is mainly because of dentinogenesis, dentin silophosphoprotein gene mutation. And type 1 is because of spark modulating calcium binding protein 2 gene mutation. And next is osteogenesis imperfecta. It is an autosomal dominant, it is having an autosomal dominant inheritance, and it can happen mainly because of collagen 1 type or alpha 1 and collagen 1 and alpha 2 gene mutation. And osteogenesis imperfecta type 3 is associated with the dentinogenesis imperfecta. So conclusion, dentin is having a regenerative potential and it is a vital tissue. So dentin is considered as a vital tissue because of the presence of odontoblast processes within the dentinal tubule. So this is the dentinal tubule and this is the odontoblast process within the dentinal tubule. This is the odontoblast. So because of the presence of the odontoblast processes, or because of the presence of this odontoblast process within the dentinal tubule, this dentin is considered as a vital tissue. And this dentin is providing the support to the overlying enamel. So as we know, this dentin, it is present between the pulp and the enamel. So it is providing the protection to the overlying enamel and it is protecting the underlying pulp. So hence, we clinicians should be very careful while dealing with the dentin. So because it is very important and in each and every aspect of the treatment, we should be very careful that we are not doing any harm to the dentin intentionally or unintentionally. Thank you.